Hello! Who remembers joysticks then? You know, the ones you would control your video games with on your home computers. Probably not so many of you if you're in America, because you were more console-based, so, you know, you were more into your joypads. Or controllers, as they tend to call them these days. But if you were one of the set who had a ZX Spectrum or a Commodore 64 or an Amstrad CPC or an Atari 8-bit machine or an Atari ST or an Amiga or an Acorn Archimedes or one of the whole slew of home computers around that time, you would have been all about the joysticks. Look, here's one now. His name's Peter. He's 37 years old and he's a plumber from Chepstow. No, wait, it's a Quick Shot 2. Oh, those were the days where everything looked like a flight controller for 10 minutes. And what a 10 minutes they were. I'm going to be honest, these were a good joystick at the time, but they weren't great in the scheme of things. You wouldn't be going back to them now, because it's all contact and leaf switch based. Ooh, this one's really knackered, actually. And the buttons don't have micro switches or anything. No micro switches in a joystick. Bad time. So away with you. But it's Quick Shot 2 turbos turned up. Look, they were fully micro switched. But gotta be said, this wasn't really the best control method for it. I mean, maybe you enjoyed it more than the others personally, but as time went on, things did move over. Our weapon of choice was pretty much the Power Play Cruiser. Not this one, it was owned by an idiot who scratched things into it for some reason. But, yeah, you stick it on the table, hold it in your hand. Clicky, clicky button. Clicky, clicky joystick. What more do you want out of life? Oh, wait, here's a collar, which, when you fiddle it around, changes how sensitive it is. Very clever, that. We did like the Cruiser, but very rarely did we have these nice black ones. For they did wear out, and they did go and buy a new one from Argos, and they only ever had the bloody Fisher-priced colour ones in stock. I think this is actually one of my original ones from the time. What a colour scheme. Who came up with that? Seriously. Crazy. But yeah, really good controller. Kind of replaced later on by the Zip Stick, which is one of these, which again, really good controller. Micro switchy. And maybe you liked something like the Bug, which is another weird controller you held in your hand and went click. But anyway, this is all old news. Let's hear some new news. And not about ring roads and political updates. I'm talking about retro gaming controllers, right? So there's a company called Monster Joysticks. They make joysticks, and usually made of sort of Perspex boxes that they send you. You assemble them, and you stick a Raspberry Pi in them, connect them to your television, and play lots of retro emulated games and all that kind of stuff. But they then had a thought, and the thought was, could we not make a retro joystick which actually plugs into an old computer and has like a modern arcade stick feel? Well, they did, and here it is. Sorry, that was a bit anticlimactic at the end there, wasn't it? And that's a bit low down. Going to have to adjust the camera. Jump cut. That's better. So here it is. I built it myself, obviously, because they send you bits, and it took me about an hour, but I was kind of watching something while I did it. It wasn't difficult, put it that way. Tell you what was difficult. It comes with all these surfaces protected by sticky stuff, and I don't know if you've ever tried to remove sticky stuff from laser cut perspex, but oh my god, it takes a long time. But it's worth it, because, you know, it ends up like this, doesn't it? Never liked the whole transparent crystal stuff myself. Don't know why. Just something that never appealed to me aesthetically, but I know it's very popular. So they do two different models. A basic one and sort of a super duper premium one. This is the basic one. Costs about £35 and the premium one is £55. And the difference is that the premium one uses proper Sandwire arcade parts. I went for the cheaper one because I thought, you know what? I'm going to review the most basic one because that's more affordable for most people watching, so that seems like a good thing. Plus, I'm the kind of freak who actually has arcade parts just sitting around his house, so I can replace these with like sound bits later anyway. What a life I lead. So, as you can see, it has wires in it. And these make it work. But more importantly, yeah, you've got an arcade-style joystick in there. You've got a couple of buttons, which both do the same thing, because the early days, the computers, they all had one button. Unless you're plugging it into a Sega Master System, which could potentially use two. And I believe you can use this with a Sega Master System, which is nice. Haven't tested that myself. You know, I'm going to have to say it now. Sorry, you all know it's coming, but I believe the Amiga actually did allow two different buttons but it was never really enabled in any games because no manufacturers ever really made joysticks with two separate button inputs, because none of the other computers that use the old 9-pin standard actually allowed that to be a thing. There we are, look at that. The old Atari connector we used to call it, which isn't really accurate. It's just like the 9-pin thing, isn't it? Anyway, back to this. Yeah, it really is obviously just plug in and play because, you know, it's a bloody joystick, isn't it? Technically, you could either use this extension lead that it comes with to plug it in, or ram that straight into the side of your computer and play it like that, if you're some sort of maniac. So, there's a little switch, isn't there? There's a little switch, children. But what does the switch do? Does it destroy worlds? No. I'll tell you what it does. And confused the fuck out of me at first because I hadn't fully read the instructions. You flip it, and it removes the up motion from the joystick and maps it to another button. Now, half of you watching will think, what the bloody hell do you want to do that for? While the other half have just stood up and saluted and screamed genius. Let me explain a problem with the early games, my friends. You see, only one joystick button, as we said earlier. Okay, they both do the same thing, one button. So if you're playing a game where a little character runs along and has to jump over stuff, you have to push up to jump. Up to jump is of the devil. It really is. It's a much looser control system. It's a pain in the bum. Nobody likes up to jump. And it was so horribly ingrained, right? This is the worst thing. Amiga released a console called the CD32. It was effectively one of their Amiga 1200 computers with a lot of bits ripped off and a couple of other bits stuck in, really. That was a good technical description, wasn't it? But it came with a hideous controller, and the early versions of it had the joypad glued on in such a way that if you actually used it at all, it got too hot and the glue came off. It was a real bit of design genius. Anyway, this controller had 6 or 7 buttons, well, at least 6 buttons, 4 face buttons, 2 shoulder buttons, which could be used for gameplay. And I'll tell you what, mates, still a lot of the games they converted to CD32 had up to jump. On their shitty, horrible, loose joypad, you still had to press up to jump, despite having at least 5 unused goddamn buttons on the goddamn controller. I'm still bitter. Can you tell, friends? Can you tell? Ah, dearie me. So what this does, effectively, by mapping the up to the button, means any old game where up was jump suddenly becomes much more playable because you've got jump, 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 shoot, shoot, shoot. Or is it the other way around? I can't remember. So that was bloody clever. Frankly, a stroke of genius, and I love these people for it. So then, what is it actually like to use is the question. Really, really good. This is only the basic one, but it's still really good. I would like micro switches on these buttons, so I'm going to replace them with micro switch buttons later. Or if you buy the premium one, it has micro switches, but they're still really solid leaf switches. They feel good. This is fully micro switched, has a bit more play in it than the sort of early controllers of the time, I think, but frankly it does feel considerably better. It's just nicer and easier to use and feels slightly higher quality, frankly, than anything they did dish out in the day. I mean, your mileage may vary for retro stuff. I mean, I know some people are more into the sort of nostalgia of it than actually the games themselves, if you see what I mean, so they're always going to play with one of the old joysticks and probably spend half their lives trying to find one, frankly. But for me, this was very, very impressive. It's just nicer to use than any of the actual old retro stuff, and it's a basic one, so hats off to it. It also underwent some rigorous testing, friends. In my office, I have an Atari ST and an Amiga set up at all times in case of emergencies, and I got my good friend Phil over, who we have been friends for, 34 years now? And we used to play Atari ST games, and Amiga games together, and Spectrum games before that, and all that kind of stuff. And despite not having practiced for 20 years, he can still fire incredibly quickly on the old buttons, which is why he was always the king of the shoot-em-ups. And yeah, he had no problem using this whatsoever. He really liked the joystick, and the buttons worked perfectly fine. He would have preferred microswitch ones, but wouldn't we all? But you know, an extra 20 quid, you can get the basic kit for that, or if, as I say, if you are the sort of person who has buttons knocking around, you can do that yourself. But yeah, I thought this was really bloody good, to be honest with you. It's a nice replacement for things which are now breaking and are hard to find replacements of, and it's a nicer thing to use anyway. I mean, if I'd had the full choice of it, I would have gone for one of the opaque ones. They do like black ones. There's all different colours of buttons and things you can get. You can even, I think, for £5 less, they do like a plywood one. Which I think the plastic is a bit nicer, isn't it? Spend the extra £5, I think, on that. But yeah, it's really high quality, really good stuff. Trying to think of problems with it, really. I mean, it was just really bloody good. I tell you what I didn't like personally, these sharp corners. Because, I don't know, I sometimes sort of hold it a bit like that and it sticks in your hand a bit, but to be honest, it's something that should be used on a flat surface anyway, like a proper arcade stick, so that's just me being weird, really. Now, I'm genuinely impressed. For the money, they're lovely things to use. They do the job really well. The parts are going to last for ages. They're fully customisable, obviously, because you put the thing together yourself. Really, the only downside is if you can't be asked to put in, like, how many screws and that, the 8 screws that hold it together. It can be fiddly, because, of course, you have to put the nut in like that and then push the screw down, which is a problem if you've already put in the bottom ones and you're pushing them all in, and then on the very last one you manage to push it in and drop it in the joystick because you have to remove all the others to open it up and get it out. I may have done that more than once. In fact, 3 times, if I remember. But yeah, it's really nice. I really like the idea that people making this sort of modern or more modern idea of controller have gone back and made it fully compatible for all us old dudes who like to play our old games on our old machines. And I've said old too much and depressed myself. Let's say retro rather than old. Yay. And whichever way you cut it, it's certainly better than that old Bart Simpson-shaped joystick, which was the stuff of nightmares.
It was quite easy.
Subscribe for more.